US President-elect Donald Trump has sacked the son of his choice for National Security Advisor from his transition team for spreading false news. Michael Flynn Jr. tweeted a fake story about a paedophile ring in Washington, which resulted in an armed standoff in a pizza restaurant. Here's our US correspondent, Amanda Walker.
Comet Pizza, a popular Washington, D.C. neighborhood restaurant, unwittingly at the center of a deeply troubling internet storm.
Last weekend, as people were dining inside here, a 28-year-old man turned up armed with an assault rifle to, as he put it, self-investigate what police have called a fictitious online conspiracy theory.
The man fired a shot inside the restaurant. No one was hurt, but this became an alarming consequence of a growing online phenomena, fake news.
So I think we're definitely onto something here with this Pizzagate investigation.
This stemmed from a bizarre and completely false article claiming that Hillary Clinton was running a child sex ring out of the pizzeria. One of the more high-profile figures fanning the flames of the spurious story was Michael G. Flynn, the son of retired General Michael T. Flynn, who President-elect Donald Trump has tapped to be his national security advisor. After the attack, Flynn Jr. tweeted that the story had not been proved untrue. Following this tweet, he's no longer working for Trump's transition team. But the president-elect's war on the establishment has created a climate for such theories that could come back to haunt him.
He has loosed onto the scene an openness to volatile and exotic ideas. And it will be interesting to see how he tries to rein that in when he needs people to believe him.
Other businesses, like the Politics and Prose bookstore on the same block as Comet Pizza, have been tied to the false report. Staff here have been receiving threatening phone calls.
They came from untraceable numbers and people just sort of talking about saying, you know, they knew what was going on and they were going to come and they were going to do terrible things. Sort of making these coming up with these wild theories about underground tunnels linking our businesses and much, much worse.
All of the affected businesses have been comforted by the solidarity shown by their customers. But after Sunday's shooting incident, they're now watching more closely who comes through their doors. The area now has police protection. As long as these lies dressed as fact can be disseminated freely on the internet, there's an unsettling sense that this could happen again, with more devastating consequences. Amanda Walker, Sky News, Washington.
Well, joining me now is Sir Alan Moses, who is chairman of the independent press regulator, IPSO. Welcome to you. Now, obviously, you're not responsible for what goes on in America, but this is...
Nor responsible for what's on the internet.
Well, exactly, but that's what I was going to ask you, because some of those stories do end up in the mainstream media. Obviously, you could say it's bad journalism, but we've all picked things up and
been victims of it.
And they've been victims of it. What can be done about it?
Well, I think that the most important thing is that people should realise that something does need to be done. If a newspaper gets a false story from a false source, and this has happened, then, of course, it is within IPSO's jurisdiction, and if it's the newspaper will be responsible for publishing that inaccurate false story. But it's a much wider and important problem, and a really important problem in this country, because people's voices and people's votes depends upon making a judgment on accurate information. And if post-truth becomes acceptable and something is not done...
No, but I mean, you say you're not responsible for what people say on the internet, but the internet is there. It is a source of information which most people
get their news from.
Exactly, most people get their news from. So would you like to have your powers extended to the internet, or could that even be done? Would that be practical?
I'm sure it needs to be thought about, and it is practicable. And I don't believe it should just be left to Facebook or to the organisations. They have just formed a partnership for the benefit of society in September 2016. There's a council. The British government have created the Council for Data Ethics in April 2016. And it is something, until it's grappled with, press regulation is merely a small part of really what is far more important, and that is the regulation of information, because people's votes and democracy depends upon accuracy on which they base
because
their
it is
judgments.
one of these things which crosses borders. I mean, we know, for example, that a lot of the anti-Hillary Clinton stories were actually emanating from Eastern Europe, people generating
easy
clickbait and
so dangerous. And of course, in the United States, where you have the First Amendment, where no regulation of news and of journalism is possible.
So how can it be dealt with?
Well, it needs to be dealt with by people are looking into it. I'm not going to be able to give a coherent answer, but it can be dealt with by looking at the sources, looking at the servers, looking at the way in which and those responsible for dissemination. The public don't even know about it. When you think that the news that you get from something like Facebook, all judged by algorithms, the like of which and the nature of which we simply don't even understand.
I mean, they are changing their position. Facebook has changed its position on fake news on news streams. But again, a lot of people are going to say, well, that's just, that's the establishment ganging up, stopping me reading what I want to read.
That's the trouble, because nobody ever promised that the truth would be interesting. And the really danger is that post-truth, which is the Oxford Dictionary's favourite word for 2016, will become acceptable. And it's up to all of us and the public and the readers to say that we wish to distinguish between newspapers that have editors and have journalists and the regulator ipso that regulates them, and this sort of flatulence on the internet.
Now, you are the head of ipso, which is the newspaper supported by many of the main newspapers regulator, not the government-sanctioned body Impress, which was set up. But you see, the problem is, some people will look at things like, for example, that headline of the Daily Mail, one of the strongest supporters of ipso, calling judges enemies of the people and trying to dig into their private life, and say, well, that's just the sort of thing which we don't like.
I'm glad that they don't like it. I'm not going to give a running commentary on matters because it's before us at the moment. But it might be worth considering the difference in that one sentence that you put to me between saying enemies of the people, which is an opinion, and the intrusion into private life, which is quite clearly potentially a breach, and that will have to be
I mean, calling them enemies of the people, but also going into their backgrounds, what their connections are to Europe, implying that will somehow bias their impartial judgment.
Yes, then ipso will have to give a judgment about that, and will do so. A judgment in which I won't take part, because I know them well and therefore feel that I'm party free. Well. Yes.
And what would happen? I mean, if you decided that, I mean, for example, I know you haven't decided, but if that headline's gone out, it's gone around the world, what can you do about it?
We do what we always do when we find a breach of the editor's code. We require the publication to correct it, publish it in the place that we dictate, in the words that we dictate, and with the font size we dictate.
So you could have a reverse front page saying not enemies of the people or something like that?
You could do, and I'm not sure that would be very good journalism.
Do you think ipso has made a difference to the behaviour of the newspaper?
I'm quite certain it has, and I wouldn't be going on doing this if I didn't believe it has. I believe internally in newspapers, they really are taking it far more seriously in the processes and the thought processes that they go through before they publish a story, and I think they hate the fact that when we do find a breach and require them to correct it, there is a lot of argument before we reach a judgment, but it's our judgment that counts, and they respect that. And I do think that if you talk to them, and if you read Pilling, the independent report that we have obtained, you will see that they do take it seriously.
There is still, though, the threat of these punitive damages or...
Under Section 40,
Under
yes.
Section 40, if newspapers don't join up to the government-sanctioned body. What do you think should be done about that?
Well, I mean, there's a consultation, and the newspapers are very good at explaining the chilling effect of not indulging in any investigative journalism if there's a fear of being involved in compulsory arbitration or in litigation, and giving a free ride to the claimants. From a regulator's point of view, what is really important, I believe, is the contractual consent by which the newspapers have been persuaded to sign up to us. And if you wave a stick at them, if you beat them into a government-backed position, it will make regulation far harder, and that'll be far more serious from the public.
Do you think newspapers are dying anyway?
I don't think they are. I think they're in great difficulties. But I do want to say, as the regulator, that you and I will suffer without newspapers. The members of the public will suffer. The way we read edited journalism is totally different from the vacuity on the internet. Even if we read it online, the way it is written and the way it is absorbed is different and is important. I mean, not you, you're much too young, but I come from a generation when it was wonderful to lay
I remember
out
them. I'm not that young.
with marmalade all over the second page or whatever, and the smell of it, and the serendipity of being able to read 5 articles at the same time, and the pictures.
But do you think people respect
totally
that
different
anymore when they can get so much at the click of a few buttons on a phone?
I think there's a real problem of what I hate that word, the millennials. I mean, I don't think my children read them in the same way as you and I. But I think they will continue to do so. And the more the vapid nonsense spread on the internet is spread, the more people will look back to and look for newspaper journalism.
Well, I think we can both agree to that hope. Thank you very much indeed, Sir Alan Moses, for joining us.
Thank you very much.